And basically, Boston's had two bad stretches and one really good one sandwiched in between. The 10-10 start was sort of understandable if you think about it, with Gordon Hayward returning to the lineup, Kyrie Irving back in the lineup as well, everybody trying to figure out their roles. 20 games in, Brad Stevens inserted Marcus Smart into the starting lineup. Things turned around, and then lately a reversal, of course, of the other sort. And if anyone out there can diagnose what's gone south for the C's, it is the Hall of Famer Tommy Heinsohn, who's with us tonight from Boston. Tommy, we appreciate the time as always. What have you seen watching this 8-game stretch that concerns you about Boston?
Well, I don't know if you remember this movie. It's an oldie. The Three Faces of Eve. It was a movie about a woman who had a split personality, 3 different personalities. That's what's happened with this basketball team. They learned to play with Kyrie, Kyrie with them. They learned to play without Kyrie. Then they trying to learn how to go back and play with Kyrie after being on their own without him. And that's where the problem is right now in the chemistry.
When you say that there's problems with the chemistry and how you play with Kyrie or without him, how do they solve that and become a cohesive unit? Because there's a lot of, people talking, saying basically they would much rather play without Kyrie. Is there any truth to that also?
Anybody that says they'd rather play without Kyrie is nuts. They're not a basketball person. The guy's a great player. Come on. What I believe happens, it's a freewheeling pattern offense. It's not like the old days where you would call a play. And it's your play. You know where you're going to shoot the ball. Everybody on your team knows. This is an interpretation of your basketball knowledge and your ability to fit what you do best into this system. That's what the problem is right now. I think there's a certain amount of immaturity on how to utilize the system when Kyrie is in the game.
Tommy, my question is, when you look at the Boston Celtics, what a run they had last year without Gordon Hayward, without Kyrie, and I'm definitely not saying it's Kyrie or Gordon Hayward, even though I don't think Gordon's back to 100%. Do they need to lessen the rotation, take some guys out of rotation? And my second question, in your opinion, who's the leader of the Boston Celtics from a player standpoint?
Well, first of all, they did shorten the rotation the other night. They played 9 guys, but the 9th guy only played like a minute. So that's what I think they're attempting to do, to gain a rhythm so everybody gets a feeling. Rozier was injured, didn't play, wasn't on a roster in the last ball game. So that's basically we're searching for a guy who is going to be the leader. Now, I think Kyrie is the natural leader. He's one of the few players that the Celtics have ever had that was able to interpret the game and know when to utilize his skills either to boost the momentum or to change the momentum, and also to be the closer when you need a guy that can score. So he is the natural leader. I don't know if he's ever done it before. I don't think so. And it requires a certain type of person to do it. Paul Pierce, when he became the captain of the team and was going to be the leader of the club, he went out and bought some books on leadership, believe it or not, and he ended up being a pretty good leader. So I think they're in the process of doing stuff like that.
Well, speaking of leadership, Brad Stevens was kind of the golden boy of NBA coaches his first 4 years, and for good reason. Success on the floor, the team improved every year. This has been easily his most challenging season and certainly the most scrutinized in terms of how he's handling all the challenges. How tough has it been on the coach?
Isn't it amazing how you go from a sure candidate, he should have got it, to coach of the year last year, and all of a sudden he doesn't know anything anymore, all right, in 1 year. This guy is a great basketball coach. He's one of the few people that I've seen come into the coaching ranks that goes to win the games and still develop players at the same time. He's willing to put players in the game who he knows are going to make mistakes. So what's going on right now is he's trying to fit pieces together on the fly. It's very difficult because it's like the leading man in a play is now asked to the spear holder in the background. And they're asking the spear holder in the background to be the leading man at times. So roles are getting confused here, and that's what I think is happening, confusion. He's trying to iron it out.
That's your second theatrical reference of this interview, by the way, Tommy. For
That's
younger
good.
viewers at home, 1957, Three Faces of Eve. Joanne Woodward won the Oscar for Best Leading Actress.
That's right.
All right, we appreciate the time, Tommy. Good to talk to you. We'll talk movies again next time.
See your local psychiatrist, will you?
Okay, we'll do that. Tommy Heinsohn, the Hall of Famer, with us from Boston, dropping basketball and,
you seen that
movie knowledge.
Nope.
You sure?
Positive.
Okay, just checking.
Nothing wrong with it. I'm going to go look it up now, though.
I haven't seen it either.
I know. I saw you Google.
I heard of it. I'd heard of it. I didn't remember.
1957?
1957, Joanne Woodward, yeah. Assuming you want to talk basketball again, let's
Of
get,
course.
What'd you make of what Tommy had to say, and particularly about the challenges that Brad Stevens has in front of him here?
I wrote down 3 things when he was talking. First of all, he talked about immaturity. So that tells me what we already knew. A lot of these young guys, they want their turn. They're immature with how things are going. Then the second thing I wrote down was roles are confused. That once again tells me there's a split between some of these guys, the younger guys, the older guys. When do we get our shots? How many minutes are we going to play? And that happens all the time. That's why a lot of young teams don't win. Last but not least, searching for a leader. That tells me that we can say whatever we want to. They're searching for a leader. They don't have one. Because if you're searching for a leader at this time of the season and you don't know who that leader is, that means your team is what, Smitty? Devoid of leadership.
And I look at when you says role confused, to me I circled as Brad Stevens. The coach has to define the roles, and that's the one guy. Because if you let players start defining their roles, we all think different. And I don't think this is a selfish team. They're just going by what they had success last year, what worked for them. Some of the guys without Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, that's last year was last year, even if you won a championship. Brad Stevens has to come out, define roles, define the rotations, and start right now getting into it. And like you said, searching for a leader. If they don't know who the leader is by now, the leader doesn't have to be your best player. Right. I think the guy for me to stand up is to be Al Horford.
Yep.
That's the guy I think should be the leader of this locker room until they can find a leader. There's nothing wrong with Al being a leader for that Boston Celtics team.
And
maybe a quieter leader. But
yeah, definitely. And as far as you go about roles being defined, you're right. That goes strictly on Brad. That's one of those things that you have to get everybody in front of each other and say, this is your role. This is what you're going to do. We don't need you playing outside of this role. Kyrie did an interview where he said, I'm not scared to say it. Me and Terry Rozier, we're competing with each other. That's not the way a team is supposed to be built. It's not supposed to be I'm competing against you.
Yeah.
I'm here to help and support you. Those comments, I just start looking at them all the time. All the comments that are being made, just telling me this team is splintering. They're going in different directions. Everybody wants to do their own thing, and it shows on the court. They're not nearly as effective offensively as they should be. Rick Carlisle was great at dictating what your roles are going to be.
Like it or not.
Brendan, you're a shot blocker and a rebounder. You are not here to score. Don't you shoot that raggedy jump hook if Dirk Nowitzki, now he really told me that. Don't you shoot that raggedy jump hook if Dirk Nowitzki's open. He saw on film, I saw Dirk, I shot my hook anyway. He said, you kick it to him. He said, that's 20,000 points over there. That's your role. When me and Caron Butler came over to the Mavericks, Caron, we don't need you to score in the fourth quarter. We have Dirk Nowitzki, Jason Terry. You have a different role here. And it was hard to say because we didn't want to hear it, but Rick knew it had to be done. Role definition is the most important thing any coach can do at any level of basketball.
You're totally right. And I had the same thing with the San Antonio Spurs with Pop. He lets you know your role. I was a guy could do a little bit of everything, Matt, but all I had to do was stand in that corner.
Don't leave.
Don't leave that corner. Don't move up. Don't move down. Throw it into Tim. And don't cut because I don't want guys double teaming Tim. Hard for me, Brendan.
He probably told you he didn't want to see that raggedy spin move.
No, my spin wasn't raggedy. But you have to define roles.
Well, we're going to hear from Brad Stevens in a moment. I want to get to one more point on the leadership question because Tommy seemed to suggest or think that Kyrie Irving is or at least should be this team's leader. How difficult is it to pull that off given the uncertainty surrounding his situation right now and the fact that he's been unwilling to clarify it?
You know, I think the business of basketball is, yes, Kyrie Irving can be a free agent, but I think guys know when you're bought into this team right now. I'm not going to be mad at Brendan or Matt if you guys are free agents. It's like, let's win right now. Hope you get as much money possible.
Sure.
Maybe I hope you stay, but if you're not here, can you buy in right now?
Got to be present.
Are you present right now to win basketball games? And a lot of time is, I know what Brendan can do. He know what I can do. But sometimes I want to see you do something for somebody else. And I'm not just speaking for Kyrie Irving.
Right.
That's the problem, I think, right now for the Boston Celtics. They're not playing for one another. They're not moving the basketball. They're not setting picks. They're not cutting hard. And then you watch their bench. There's not a lot of guys up saying, let's go, B. Wood. No. Everybody's sitting there like this. So it's starting to be a me team. And that still goes back to Brad Stevens. You're going to have to define roles. And if guys don't want to have those roles, you have enough players to still win basketball games.
Yeah, definitely. You hit it on the head, and you're talking about Kyrie, and is he the leader? He's the best player. And so a lot of times people assume the best player is supposed to be the leader. That's not always the case. And in this situation, it's a little different because Kyrie went to Boston because he wanted his own team. He wanted his own thing. And now the ship is a little bit rocky. If the younger guys don't buy into him as the leader, does he stay here this offseason? And what happens to the Boston Celtics is Kyrie leaves. You know, and there's a lot of different tea leaves that are attached to that because you're talking about potential trades with Anthony Davis. What if Kyrie leaves? Anthony Davis not going to want to play there. So it's going to be a really interesting situation. What happens with Boston down the stretch of this series? I mean, down the stretch of this season and in the playoffs. Because right now, if the playoffs started today, they'd be playing against the 76ers. And I don't know if they can win that matchup.
Situation's a little simple.